Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. My name is Sudhir Sahasranaman and you're watching CBSE with Sudhir. Let's get started with part 2 explanation video of the story of the chapter on the Maratha Empire. We saw in the first part the role played by Shivaji in establishing the Maratha Empire and subsequently how it was taken forward by his sons, in fact, both Sambhaji and later on Rajaram. Now, in this part, we will understand about the different aspects of the Maratha administration, the kind of rule that was established first under Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and thereafter by different Maratha chieftains and kings. Now, when we're talking about the kind of administration which was there, it was a centralized administration. When you say centralized administration, it means that the power was concentrated at the center in the king and the ministers around the king. Whereas when you say decentralized, it means that people who are there in different parts of the kingdom, they also get a lot of powers. They can decide on certain things themselves without having to consult the king or the chief ministers. So Shivaji Maharaj essentially followed what was known as a very centralized kind of an administration for his kingdom. One of the things that he did was to abolish the hereditary post. Now, what does it mean? These hereditary posts means from the king, it would pass to his son, to his son, to his son, and so on. So all the power would be concentrated in one single family. This was what was followed under the sultans and also the Mughal Empire, obviously, right? Akbar's son Jahangir became the son, Jahangir's son Shah Jahan became the next emperor. So it was essentially hereditary post. Here in this case, at least with different kind of post under the administration, he did not do so. Though it must be said that Shivaji's son Sambhaji Maharaj only succeeded him. And land assignments and paid a salary to every government official out of the state treasury. So every government official would be getting a salary. So in that sense, it was a very professionally run administrative system. Many officials were periodically transferred as well so that they don't stay in one place and therefore they become some kind of mini power centers. Because when you have an official staying, which is why even today you have IAS officers, IPS officers frequently getting transferred, because if a particular police officer, for example, stays at a particular police station for a very long period of time, he becomes like a power center in that area, right? Which the government will never encourage or want. So many officials were periodically transferred as well, ensuring that they would not have enough power to dictate terms to the king. So they will not become a power unto themselves. Shivaji also gave pensions to widows of soldiers who died in battle. So he was taking care of their welfare after their husbands had died, even offering military posts to their sons. So someone in the family would get a post in the army also. Therefore, this showed that he cared for the soldiers who fought for the Maratha kingdom and their families, right? So these are important aspects that tell us about the kind of government, the kind of administration that Shivaji Maharaj ran. Now, these are the gold and copper coins which are printed in his name, minted in his name. So you can see his own name being mentioned, Chhatrapati Shivaji, and the use of the Devanagari script. Now, that's very significant, right? Because otherwise you would expect that it to be written in Marathi, right? But he has used the Devanagari script. So it kind of also shows his cultural identity, that he was a very all-embracing kind of a king. Now, this is an interesting paragraph which tells us about another aspect of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Now, he had issued instructions to his officials that they should not mistreat the subjects. Subjects means the people of the kingdom, or forcibly grab even a blade of grass from them. You should not do anything that would hurt them. In one of the letters, he wrote that wood from big trees like teak is required for the navy, because you need to make boats and ships, etc. Right? So you need teak because teak is a strong wood. If needed, secure permission for cutting the trees from the forest. You need to take permission, and only then you should be cutting the trees. Other trees like mango and jackfruit are also useful, but do not touch them, because such trees take many years to mature and the people look after them like their children. So basically, he understood the relationship between people and the trees like the mango and the neem tree and the jackfruit tree. And he said that you should not cut them because they take many years to mature and become a full blooming fruit giving tree, and therefore you should not cut it because people treat them as if they are their own children. So he understood the relationship between people and nature, and if you cut them, will their sorrow ever end? So if you accomplish something by oppressing others, by hurting someone else, it perishes soon. It will not stay with you. There is harm in the absence of such trees. So obviously, if you cut a mango tree, if you cut a neem tree, if you cut a jackfruit tree, it is also harmful to the environment. So therefore, do not use any force. So he's kind of advising, counseling his officers to behave in an environmentally responsible manner, also something in a very humane manner. So this is an example of a humane approach, also an environment friendly and responsible approach. Okay, this is what this example shows. You can get this as a 2-mark question. That's what they are asking you here. Now, Shivaji also had an Ashta Pradhana Mandala, which was like, in today's language, you would call it the Council of Ministers, right? And this would be assisting him and helping him with the administration of his Maratha Empire or the kingdom. So, in the first place, you would have the Prime Minister. He is the heading the entire Ashta Pradhana Mandala. Then there would be people who would be in charge of specific departments or specific ministries. For example, there would be a land revenue minister who would be in charge of collecting revenue from land. Then there would be a finance minister who would take care of, how much money is there in the treasury and how much should be spent on different kinds of subjects. Then there would be someone who would be a chief justice who would kind of take care of, ensuring that justice is provided to everybody. There would be somebody to look after religious affairs. There would be somebody who is like a defense minister and the Senapati, the commander-in-chief. There would be somebody to take care of relations with other neighboring kingdoms, etc. There is somebody who would provide him with intelligence. Intelligence doesn't mean this. Intelligence means to collect information from different, like the intelligence minister could go in disguise to the market and just keep listening to what the shopkeepers have to say, what the merchants have to say, what the common people have to say. Because when you listen to them without revealing your identity, now shopkeepers may be very unhappy. Oh, I really don't like what this king is doing. He's imposing these new taxes and it is going to provide us with so much of hardship. 20% tax, where will we get the money from? So if the intelligence minister hears them kind of complaining like this, he can come back to the king and report that people are not happy. So we need to do something so that they are not unhappy, right? So this is the way intelligence is collected. Right now, in the present scheme, everyone, you will have an intelligence chief who is normally an IPS officer. The Marathas often levied taxes called Chaut, okay, which is 25%, and Sardesh Mukhi, which is an additional 10% to the Chaut. So that makes it 35%. These were collected from provinces that were not directly under them, including places in the Deccan, that is in the central part of India, and some parts in North India. What the Marathas did, now this was a little later, okay. What the Marathas did was to protect these provinces and did not intervene in their internal administration. If they did not pay these tax, the Marathas would attack the kingdom. That was the threat which was indirectly given out. The Mughals also approved of this arrangement. Now, the Mughals, I'm not talking about the Aurangzeb era, but subsequently, when the Mughals had become a little weak, that's when they kind of agreed to this arrangement by the Marathas, where they would kind of impose these kind of taxes. So this was mainly from 1719 onwards, when there was this particular Mughal emperor called Farrukhsiyar. I'm just telling this to you for your own information. Around 1719 is when the Mughals agreed to this arrangement of the Marathas imposing Chaut and Sardesh Mukhi tax on the people of the provinces which were not directly under them, but mainly in the Deccan and in the northern part of India. Now, In the 18th century, another important aspect that the Marathas did was to actually do what the Mughals used to do. That is the style of coinage, the kind of coins that were minted, adding their own cultural symbols. Otherwise, you would see a lot of Persian thing. Here also, it is written in Persian, but you see the kind of words that have been used on these coins. You have Ganpat, referring to the entire religious symbol. Also, Ganpati, Pantapradhan, rupee. Okay. This was minted by the Patwardhans, who were the generals under the Peshwas, and this had script in both Devanagari. This is Devanagari, and this is entirely Persian. On one side is an invocation to Lord Ganapati, that is Ganapati, and the other hand it is referring to the Panta Pradhan. The other declares loyalty to the Peshwa, referred to as the Panta Pradhan. Peshwa's other name was Panta Pradhan. So you see both the use of Devanagari as well as Persian script on the minting of the coins. Now we have understood this, the basic administration. Now let's look specifically at how the army was managed. Now the Maratha armed forces were divided into three parts: infantry, cavalry, and navy. Now the cavalry is the foot soldiers, the horses, etc. The Bargis, whose horses and equipment were paid for by the states, and the Shiledars, whose horses and equipment were paid for by the soldiers themselves. So there were of two kinds, Bargis and Shiledars. So one hand it was paid by the state, the other one was paid by the soldiers. In the 18th century, the Marathas also noticed the superiority. So you see the Marathas, what you realize, one important and interesting aspect of the Maratha Empire administration was that they were kind of constantly looking at what other rulers were doing and taking and copying and taking the best practices from them. Whether it is about the minting of the coins by the Mughals, in this case, they were looking at the way the armies in the European countries were being managed. They found that they were much more disciplined, so they tried to recruit such troops. So Mahatji Shinde raised a very European style army. Okay, so swords and lances, which are like two weapons of the Marathas, but they also used guns, they used rockets by Shivaji, and by 1770 metal tube rockets were also being used. So different kinds of weaponry was also being used, and the way the European style disciplined troops were there, the Marathas tried to make their infantry, cavalry, and navy on those lines. Now, these were some of the weapons which were used by the Maratha soldiers. So we've already seen in the first part about how Shivaji focused a lot on the construction of forts, because he realized that would really ensure that their defense is very tight, because on one side of the entire Maratha Empire is the Arabian Sea, right? So they could be attacked by the navy. So they wanted to construct forts which would ensure that the Maratha Empire remained extremely strong from a defense point of view. So the Shivaji controlled and built a considerable number of forts, as they were essential to strategically control important routes and shelter the army when engaging in guerrilla warfare, that they could attack somewhere and return to the fort. Okay, so here they would be absolutely safe. So therefore, this fort was very important. Guerrilla warfare, as I explained to you in the first video, it is to kind of take the enemy by surprise by launching an attack which the enemy did not particularly anticipate or expect. Now, the finance minister of Shivaji was a person called Ramachandra Pant Amatya, whose quote we read right at the beginning of this chapter. He, in his book called the Adnya Patra, the Royal Edict, means it's edict means in Hindi, I would say, or in Urdu, it is called the Farman. It's an order. It says forts are the core of the state. In their absence, the land gets devastated in the face of an invasion. So they ensure defense of the state. Therefore, all the former kings secured the country by building forts. This kingdom, that is the Maratha kingdom, was created by the late great master Shivaji from forts alone. Even a great enemy like Aurangzeb invaded, conquered great empires like Bijapur and Bhaganagar. But it was due to the forts that the Maratha state survived despite decades of onslaught. So they could not kind of conquer the Maratha Empire mainly because of the presence of the forts. Now let's look specifically at the navy. Maritime means anything to do with the sea or the ocean. So Shivaji had created a navy because, as I said, the west coast is entirely the sea, the Arabian Sea. So you needed the navy, the ships, and the boats in order to ensure that nobody could attack from the sea route. So in the 18th century, subsequently, Kanhoji Angre guided the Marathas to victory in many naval battles thanks to a clever use of geography and battle tactics, despite the Maratha ships not being as technologically advanced as the European ones. So despite not being very technologically advanced, their navy managed to defeat many of their enemies when Kanhoji Angra was ruling over the Maratha Empire. At that time, at that time, the strength of the Europeans was their navies, right? They forced Indians to purchase their naval trade passes, cartas in Portuguese, again, something which we will study in the next chapter, at a price. And any ship that passed through those waters without the pass from the Portuguese was kind of confiscated, that was taken over by the Portuguese. So that was a problem in the sea, that you had to pay money to the Portuguese in order to get their cartas, right, in naval trade pass, in order to conduct trade. If you don't do that, the Portuguese would confiscate that. Marathas said, nothing doing. These should be ideally our waters, not for the Portuguese to come all the way from Europe and control these waters and ask us to pay money to buy these trade passes. So they challenged this practice and started demanding that Europeans, you need to give us money to buy passes. So, and the Europeans, what they did, they labeled Kanhoji Angre as a pirate. Pirate is someone who loots the ships on the sea. So they kind of were very angry and they called him these kind of names. So these are the some of the, this is a painting which shows the Maharashtra grabs and say a naval battle taking place on the high seas. The Maratha ships attacking English ships. Now, in 1665, 4 ships from Shivaji's fleet reached Muscat, okay, which is the capital of Oman. The ruler there captured them and arrested the men on board. He also prepared a few ships to attack Shivaji's coastal possessions. But on hearing that Shivaji's navy contained more than 100 ships, he retreated inside his harbor. So he decided that it is not good enough to fight these people. 1 second. Next, let's come to the judicial system. What kind of a law system was followed under Shivaji's empire and subsequently even the Maratha Empire? When we are talking about Maratha Empire, we are not talking only about the years of under Shivaji, but subsequently under different kinds of rulers. The Marathas had a very efficient judicial system, right? They were moderate in using capital punishment, in the sense that they would not kind of give death penalty to everybody. They would not hang everybody, right? They would not kind of give the death penalty to everybody. So they would say, okay, only in cases where this person has committed a very heinous crime, that's where this person deserves capital punishment, deserves death penalty. Otherwise, he should not be punished with death. There was a body called the Panchayat, which is not the same as we studied in the civics lessons. The Panchayat was a local gathering of officials and prominent men, and the main body that delivered justice. So the main body that delivered justice was known as the Panchayat. An appeal could be made to a Maratha chief in case of an unsatisfactory verdict. So if someone is not very happy with the judgment given by this Panchayat, they could thereafter appeal to a Maratha chief as well. So basically, what is meant to be said is that there were checks and balances. It was not like one person saying that, okay, sentenced to death and that's the end of it. No, you could further appeal, just like the judicial system is there now. So what I mean to say is that it was a rather modern and a very robust kind of a judicial system. Additionally, in various prominent towns like Pune, Indore, etc., the Kotwal or the police. The Kotwal is generally the police chief. or the police was also deployed to ensure law and order within the city. Let's next come to how trade was conducted. Now, Shivaji obviously understood the importance of trade, also being a sea kingdom. He understood how trade can be a major advantage for the prosperity of the kingdom. So he actively participated in maritime foreign trade himself, that is, trade with various other foreign countries. He and his officials had their own ships, which they regularly sent to ports such as Mocha in Yemen, Muscat in Oman, and Malacca in Malaysia. So you are realizing that if this is India, Malaysia is somewhere here, right? Oman and Yemen, etc., somewhere here. So it would go here. It would also go here. So you are realizing, or of course, they had the places in Tamil Nadu. From here also, you can send them there. So in that sense, so focus was on maritime foreign trade. What did these ships carry? They carried gold, they carried textiles in order to sell them in foreign countries. Then roads were constructed, maintained, because Shivaji and subsequent Maratha kings realized that unless you have a very dynamic and a very good quality transport system, it would obviously affect the trade network. So it's very important that good quality roads were there. So you have established the sea network. You also need to establish them on land. So in places such as Odisha in the 18th century, a network of ferries was maintained for river transport. So you have it on sea, you have it on road, you have it on river. And you also built bridges on rivers and small streams to facilitate easy transport. Then let's come to the cultural revival. What kind of culture was really followed under the Maratha kings? Now Shivaji's vision of Swarajya. Okay, what Swarajya means? One's own rules. Swarajya. Swa means my own Rajya, is evident in his seal. Now this kind of a seal which was put out by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, which carried a Sanskrit inscription. Now this is written in Sanskrit, and this was different from the Persian inscription which was minted on different coins. And this in Sanskrit said, this seal, that is authority of Shivaji, the son of Shaji, waxing like the new moon. Waxing is the different shapes of the new moon, revered by the world. That is, the entire world respects him, reigns for the welfare of the people. Reigns means he rules for the welfare of the people. So basically saying what his motto is, what his thought process is. Now Shivaji also commissioned a treatise. Treatise is a book called Rajya Vyavara Kosha. Rajya means kingdom, Vyavara means behavior, Kosha means wealth, right? With the aim of promoting the Marathi language. It provided Sanskrit equivalents for the prevalent Persian words used in diplomatic exchanges, as a result of which the percentage of foreign loan words in Marathi diplomacy decreased considerably. So what they did was to provide for whatever Persian words were there, they also provided the Sanskrit synonyms, translations of those Persian words. So you realize that when you do this Marathi, of course you spoke Marathi, you knew a bit of Persian, you also knew Sanskrit. So there was a cultural divergence. You know, it was not homogeneous. There is heterogeneity in the kind of different languages that were followed, the different kind of cultures that were followed. Shivaji obviously was a devout Hindu, but who respected other religions while upholding his own. His saffron colored flag was adopted by all Marathas. He rebuilt desecrated temples. Desecrated means temples which were destroyed by people of other faiths. He promoted Sanskrit and Marathi literature, religious institution, and traditional arts in his kingdom. But the area where he promoted or contributed the most was to revive ancient Indian culture and values by giving people a demonstration that mighty kingdoms and empires could be defeated, right? Because he gave people the self-confidence, because otherwise till then people would believe that the Mughals could never be defeated, right? He showed that you could actually take them on. You could actually defeat them. You could actually be better than them. And the Marathas could administer, maintain, expand, and run and rule over an entire empire of their own. Please remember, before Shivaji, all these people thought that we are so strong, we should have an empire of our own. It was only Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj who came and established that Maratha empire. So the Marathas basically gave that self-confidence to the people of present-day Maharashtra, which also Maratha empire, of course, included more than present-day Maharashtra, that they could have a fabulous empire of their own. Now, let's just go through this paragraph and then we will come to that box. Okay. Now, Shivaji's, now this, if you see the Modi, it is called the Modi script, no connection with the Prime Minister. The Modi script is a cursive form of writing the Devanagari. The way you write, it's a cursive form. That was the main script which was used by the Marathas while writing letters, right? Now, Shivaji's example continued even with his successors. The Bhosles of Nagpur, they also promoted local culture and tradition. They worshipped the Jagannath Puri temple in Lord Jagannath in Odisha, right? Because that was interrupted during the Mughal rule and the Marathas revived it. And there were two Maratha women who specifically did something very remarkable about who we are going to study now. The first one we actually referred to in the first explanation video was Tarabai, who was the wife of Rajaram. Rajaram was the son of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, the half brother of Sambhaji Maharaj, who became king after Sambhaji Maharaj was killed by Aurangzeb. Now, Tarabai was a fearless, and 1700 was when Rajaram died. So his wife Tarabai took over ruling after the death of her husband Rajaram, realizing that the presence of Aurangzeb and the mighty Mughal army. Aurangzeb, I think, died in the year 1709. Here somewhere. Aurangzeb died in the year 1707. He was born in 1618 and he died in 1707. I'll just mention this. 1618 to 1707 is when he died at a place not exactly in Aurangabad, but near. His grave is in Aurangabad, but he died some, I think, 200 or 250 kilometers away from that place. Okay. Realizing that the presence of Aurangzeb and the Mughal army in the Deccan, that is in the central region, North India was unprotected, she organized large Maratha armies. You can see this painting, which kind of shows her courage. In that sense, she was the architect of the northward Maratha expansion. So, if the Marathas managed to expand in the northern part of the country, it was essentially because of the bravery and the courage shown by Tarabai. Her sense of military strategy, so she was a strategist, and her tenacity. Tenacity means her persistence and, not giving up attitude, outsmarted the Mughal Empire and preserved Maratha independence during a critical period. Ahilyabai Holkar, and if you ever go to Indore, or if any one of you is from Indore, you would know about the Holkar dynasty of Indore. Now, Ahilyabai Holkar was a Skyam. Skyam means she was part of the generation of the Holkar dynasty, one of the chief families responsible for the Maratha expansion in North India, right? So, along with Tarabai, Ahilyabai Holkar also played a prominent role. This dynasty ruled a kingdom of considerable extent in the central part. Indore is in present-day Madhya Pradesh. So we are talking now about the central part, which is a little above the present-day Maharashtra. So if you see like this, if this is Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh would be somewhere here. So Indore would be somewhere here. Okay. Even after losing her husband and son, she bravely governed the state for 30 years, administering it wisely while caring for the common people. Ahilyabai was a devout person, means very religious by nature, who built a lot of temples, ghats, wells, and roads throughout India, from Kedarnath in the northern part of India to Rameshwaram in the southern part of India. So that is the spread. I mean, she was herself ruling from Indore, but she focused on temples and other kind of religious structures in the northern part and also in the southern part of the country. Even more famous is that she rebuilt the Kashi Vishwanath temple in Varanasi or Banaras that was destroyed by Aurangzeb, and also the Somnath temple in Gujarat that had been destroyed by Mahmud of Ghazni, right? So these were two famous temples that she helped reconstruct. Ahilyabai Holkar is also credited with promoting the Maheshwar weaving industry in Madhya Pradesh, basically focusing on the traditional handloom industry, which continue to this state, right? See, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to prepare test papers after we finish with the entire social science syllabus in Hindi and English separately of class 8. I hope to do that by early November. Once we do that, I will put out chapter-wise test papers. Now, when you do those chapter-wise test papers, it will be on our website, studywithsudhir.com. Once you see that, it will give you an idea about how exactly to approach each one of the chapters, what are the questions that you should prepare, and how you should write your answers. All those things will be there. It will be in the form of a test. You can attempt the test and then check it with the answers that I have written so that you get a very clear idea. So that will be on the website. Okay. We have studied this. Now let's move to a place called Thanjavur, which is in modern day Tamil Nadu. Okay. Now Ekoji was the half brother of Shivaji Maharaj, and he conquered the Thanjavur region in present day Tamil Nadu in the late 17th century, and that started the beginning of the Maratha Empire in the southern part of India. Now the Thanjavur Marathas, now this is the typical Tanjore in old this thing. Thanjavur during the British times was written as Tanjore, and Tanjore paintings are very famous. Now I don't know, please Google and check out. They look very rich and a lot of ornaments, etc. So Thanjavur Marathas especially helped create a syncretic culture, means a culture which was very rich and which was full of tradition, right? Focus a lot on culture and arts. They were great patrons. Patrons means they encouraged the arts, and many of the rulers themselves were poets and dramatists, right? So this was something which was done by Ekoji, who was the half brother of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Have you heard of the dance form Bharatnatyam? Now this form has a deep connection, and this is part of your homework. I want you to find out what was the connection between the Marathas and Bharatnatyam. And I want you to write that small paragraph after you do Google search. Please do Google search, but write it in your own words. Don't send me ChatGPT stuff. I mean, at class 8 level, you should not rely on ChatGPT. Use your mind. Read about it and write 40 words, 50 words in your own words in the comment section. This is part of your homework. That's why deliberately I am not telling this to you out here. Now, of all the Thanjavur Maratha rulers, the contribution of Sarfoji II are the most notable. He was very well versed, means he understood the Indian and European languages. He wrote a Marathi play called Devendra Kuravanji, in which he kind of described the geography of the world, whatever was known at that time. Then Sarfoji also patronized means he encouraged many musicians, and it was during his time that modern Carnatic music took shape, as did the early parts of the famous classical dance form of Bharatanatyam. So here the hint has been given. I'll tell you another interesting story. Do you know how the word Sambar actually came by? Because when Sambhaji Maharaj, the son of Shivaji Maharaj, was ruling in southern part of India, he missed dal. You know, he obviously used to have dal sabji or dal khichdi, whatever, when he was in the Deccan central part of India. So then these people decided that let's use the dal and create a separate kind of a new dish for him. And it was in his honor, Sambhaji Maharaj, that it was named as Sambar. Okay, so that's how the name came about. It was told by Shashi Tharoor as part of one discussion as to how the name really came about. So it's a very interesting story. So Sambar originated in South India in order to please Sambhaji Maharaj. This is the Brihadeshwara temple in Thanjavur, a fabulous, beautiful temple on which there is Marathi inscription, and that records the history of the Bhosle family. Now, Sarfoji was also interested in matters of medicine. He established the Dhanvantri Mahal, which was a center for medicine. It offered free treatment of diseases using both Indian and Western medicine. So Indian would be largely Ayurvedic, Western would be largely allopathic. He also started a printing press, which was the first of its kind by a ruler in India. He got the history of the Bhosle family inscribed on the walls, what I just now showed you, of the Brihadeshwara temple in Thanjavur. Anybody from Thanjavur, please raise your hands here. And it is known as one of the single largest inscriptions in India, and archaeologists have been able to read that and understand the history of that time. Okay. Now, the cultural environment of Thanjavur was multilingual. When did I go to Thanjavur? I went in 2015, 10 years back, with a mix of many influences. The local Tamil culture, the Telugu culture, because people a little above would speak Telugu. So Tamil culture, Telugu culture, Marathi language, everything was, there was cultural integration, and this is very important because when they were ruling in Tamil Nadu, the northern part of Tamil Nadu, there would be a lot of Telugu influence. Tamil would be spoken there, and these rulers from Maratha Empire came there. So Marathi plus Tamil plus Telugu. So a lot of cultural interaction took place between these three different linguistic groups. Then let's understand finally the Maratha legacy, just to kind of recap. Now, the Maratha legacy main point is that it challenged the domination of the Mughals. So that is point number one. It established the single largest Indian empire before the British took over the subcontinent. This is point number two. They set up a new way. We have seen how they were doing the administration. So you get an idea about how they were governing their empire. They also revived many local Hindu traditions, but without discriminating against people who followed other faiths. It could be Islam, it could be Christianity, because the Europeans had started coming. It could be Buddhism or Jainism also. Then they fought against oppressive rule and took over the English, the British, and the Portuguese, right? Because they were kind of driven by this ideal of Swarajya, that our land, we would be the rulers, not some foreigners who would come and rule over us. And it inspired, because Swarajya as a concept was taken forward by many other people like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Mahatma Gandhi himself, Swami Dayanand Saraswati, Dadabhai Naroji. All of them spoke about the concept of self-rule or Swarajya, right? And that kind of planted the early seeds for India's freedom movement from the British. Okay, with this, we have come to the end. I would want you to kind of go through this entire points by points, so that you kind of are able to recap this entire story, this entire chapter of the Maratha Empire. Very significant from a history point of view, very significant from your syllabus and exam point of view. As I said, I would be preparing test papers which will be very useful for you in order to prepare well for your final examination, right? Tata, bye-bye. Thank you very much. Namaskar. I will meet you now next in chapter 4, which is about the beginning of the colonial era. Very fascinating chapter. I look forward to meeting you there. Tata, bye-bye. Namaskar. God bless you.